they were chanting. Arjun, I thought they were chanting, "I'm from Iceland." But we look like when I got the scarf and actually read it, it says "ah from," so it's like something in Icelandic. We're like, God, we're so dumb.
You were probably yelling
everyone,
that too. I'm from Iceland.
I know, we're like, what a weird chant, but
All right, Craig, kick it off.
No, you kick it off.
All right, fine. Ooh, I'm kind of rusty.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, there we go. And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the CC and Friends Football Podcast.
Yeah.
We're back. We were doing some technical improvements and getting our minds right for the next episode. And we're back and better than ever. What's up, guys?
howdy, how we doing?
What's up? Back with some new headphones, Clay. You have Clay, right?
Yeah, now I can hear you guys talk even better.
Hey, Hemant, you never said what your favorite scarf is behind Clay Shore. Look at that collection, by the way.
You're missing a couple. Didn't make the cut.
Well, what didn't make the cut?
Perugia and AC Milan.
What was the first one?
Perugia, it's a Serie B team.
Never mind.
Why do you have that?
My sister played in their
For them.
stadium or something when she went to Italy.
Huh.
I can't get my eyes off the Swansea one. That is beautiful.
Also, one's an interesting one. I personally really like the Burnley one. It's well made.
It's quality.
Well made.
Quality.
What's the one next to the, what is that, Barcelona? Right next to the left of the Swansea one.
This one, that's York City FC.
I like that one.
Yeah, that one's cool too.
Did your sister play for them too?
No, that's who we went to. They're in the 6th division of England,
Wow.
and we went to their game when we visited England.
Oh, they're the team that just lost to AFC Richmond.
I don't know. I'm not caught up.
Thanks for the spoiler.
No, I just made that up. Dude, Richmond is in the Premier League. They don't play these 6th division teams. Come on now.
Could have been an FA Cup or whatever.
Oh yeah, you're right. Could have been.
I need to get an Apple TV thing.
Huh?
I said I need to get an Apple TV subscription so I can watch the newest season.
Oh, you haven't watched any Ted Lasso?
I watched the first two, but then my subscription ran out because that was the only show I watched on the Apple TV. So,
Dude, speaking of Ted Lasso, sorry, I'm looking at Hemant's had a timer prepared this whole time, but he hasn't started the timer yet. Anyways, speaking of Ted Lasso, did you guys see? I feel like for some reason Ted Lasso and the whole Wrexham story are very similar. Like they're probably not, but they have similar vibes for me. And did you see Wrexham just announced that they're playing Manchester United this summer?
I did see that.
Did you see the announcement video?
No.
It's really funny. It's Ryan Reynolds and Rob, however you pronounce his last name. Yeah, they they like got on Skype or whatever with Sir Alex, and then they're like, oh, Sir Alex, we're so excited to play, and he was just like not saying. Well, actually, I won't ruin it, but just watch it. It's a funny video that they got Fergie and the two of them to do together.
That's a good chance for Wrexham to really announce their arrival onto the world stage.
Yeah, it'll be a good warm-up game for them too.
Yeah.
They also picked up legendary ex-Man United and ex-Wrexham player
Ben Foster.
Ben Foster. That's correct.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah,
Wow.
out of retirement.
It's probably just because Ben Foster is going to do some promotion on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
has a nice little YouTube and
Cool
podcast
promotion.
thing going.
Yeah.
The cycling GK.
I guess we never said who all is here, but
Oh, yeah. I'll introduce everybody.
Yeah.
So you have your usual suspects here today. Craig, Hemant, Clay, and Clay. There we go. A very exciting lineup.
That's the gang right there. Good line up.
Line up. All right,
Alrighty,
Hemant,
fellas.
what do we got? What do we got on the schedule, Hemant?
So today's episode, right? The theme of today's episode is the football manager, managers, and I was inspired by this because of one Antonio Conte. He's been in the news a lot recently, and there's a lot to talk about. I'm glad we have Clay Troyer to talk about Antonio Conte and Spurs, but to set the scene, a few weeks ago, or maybe last week, Conte had a press conference where he revealed how he truly felt. He revealed his emotions, and some would say he ranted, saying that Spurs were unacceptable and blaming the players. And a lot of people said he was almost trying to get set up to be sacked from that press conference. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of reaction to that press conference. Some people saying, what is Conte doing? He's like lost his head. Other people saying he's spitting facts. So Clay Troyer, I was curious to hear your perspective on Conte's press conference and what's happening at Spurs.
Yeah, of course. Have you guys heard of the press conference?
I have.
Okay.
I will say his English is improved a lot since the last time he was in English.
I think he might have studied his English just to do this press conference.
Yeah, so basically,
fake laugh by Clay Troyer.
10 minutes later,
real laugh by Clay Wright, but fake laugh.
to kind of set the stage a little bit. I mean, I'm not really. So I think a lot of people thought that it was outrageous what he said, but they take snippets of what he says here and there, and like will tweet that, all the Tottenham news accounts or football news accounts, and that's not really fair to him, but it's also not fair to, like you said, like the language barrier. Like he doesn't quite say things how most native English speakers would, so it might come off as more harsh than it truly is. But at the same time, he essentially laid into the club as well as the players. And I don't think a lot of what he said about the players is necessarily, out of reach. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen that locker room video with Vincent Kompany in Burnley, and he was far more harsh than Conte has ever been in public to Tottenham's players. So there's one thing to say about that, but there's another thing to say about to claim that the players aren't giving their all is, I think, a bit of a stretch and a bit of an immature way to go about it. It's not, I don't think, out of base to say that the club has never won thing, and that in 20 years with the owners we've never won anything. We have won one thing, but it essentially is irrelevant. That's not, I don't think, that far to say, and someone needs to say that. If he's not having that conversation with Daniel Levy in private, or if that conversation is not going anywhere, saying it in public is not that bad of a move. It might be unprofessional, but it's not untrue. But to say, like I said, to say that the players aren't giving their all, I think is a bit out of reach. As well as, he has this incapability to be flexible with the way that he plays and his choices. I mean, you look at the fall, and we had Emerson Royale, who was probably the worst player in the Premier League at the time. And, he had a resurgence once we signed Porro, but he refused to give minutes to two other players that, and no one can really understand this. He claims that Jed Spence was not a Conte signing. Okay, what does a Conte signing really mean? Like, what you're getting into when you sign for Tottenham. You're not going to be able to just sign ready-made players like United or City or Liverpool will. Just name drop your guys' teams there. But when you have a player like Jed Spence, it's not like he's some random young right back. He's like one of the most promising young right backs that just joined the league. I mean, he's starting every game for Forest, no doubt, if he doesn't sign for Spurs. So what's the point in that signing, And then you send him off to loan, right? And he's starting every game there and looking decent. But now you've absolutely destroyed his confidence, so he's got to essentially start over. When he's coming off of a very popular or a very positive season in the championship that he won. So that was a frustrating point of contention for me, as well as his style of play. It's one thing if you're playing defensive in every game and reacting to how the other team plays and you win all your games. But Craig mentioned this very early in the season that we were sneaking out wins, and sooner or later that was going to catch up to us. And sure enough, it did. I had confidence that our style of play was going to change and we were going to be more progressive, but it wasn't, and it didn't. And when you have the attack that Tottenham has, you can't like that's a phenomenal attack, especially when you bring in some subs and other opportunities, right? And for Conte to refuse to play any sort of progressive or attacking football is just outrageous. And then blame all of that on the players in the club is a little bit absurd. You know, I saw a tweet the other day that said some Tottenham fans would, if they woke up with a hole in their sock, they'd blame Daniel Levy. And that's honestly true. Like, at a certain point, you got to realize, okay, we got like over 10 players this summer, and somehow we're still in the same situation that we were, right? This is not a team with terrible players. Yeah, one of our best players has underperformed all season, but if you look him play, he doesn't understand his role in this Conte system. The front three, of Son, Kane, and Kulusevski, when they're all healthy, are, Son does not know how to press. He doesn't know how to press, and he doesn't know how to defend. So when you see Kulu and Kane pushing the ball to the other side, Son is stepped in on fronting one of their center midfielders. And by the time it gets to the outside back that he's supposed to be stepping up on, he steps up to him then, and it's too late, and they are able to pass around him. And it happens every single time Tottenham play. You should go back and watch them film and see it. It's absurd. So he doesn't know how to play, as well as Perisic attacking down that wing is almost taking up some of his space, where Son doesn't know what to do. And surely, as the manager, you can see that and figure that out. And we haven't been able to figure it out. And, part of it is maybe on Son. He came out and said that he hasn't been good enough, and fair enough to him. That's respectable. But at the same time, your job as a manager is to figure out the best way for this team to play. And as Conte said, from last season to this season, it has somehow become worse, or came to become worse, or something like that. So, I'm not really sure what happened. But I've been Conte out for a while, so yeah.
Could have been Conte out for that long. He's only been here for less than a year.
I mean, I've been Conte out since December, I'd say.
Well, so actually,
Anyway,
it's
maybe.
interesting you just mentioned that, because that was actually my question was just gonna be, and maybe you can't answer it based on your last comment, but my question was gonna be, this doesn't make any sense to me, because Conte came in. He didn't come in at the beginning of this season. He came in less than halfway through last season, and Tottenham did relatively well under him. I think they were the best team after the winter break last year, right? Or after Christmas, so they had like the most points or the most goals, and they were
yeah.
And it wasn't just like 2-3 games at the end of the season. It was like 4 or 5 month stretch that Tottenham did really well under Conte. And then in the summer they signed. I mean, people were scared of Tottenham. Not scared, but people were saying, Tottenham's going to be a force to reckon with under Conte before the summer. And then after the summer, you guys had one of the best transfer windows in the league when you picked up some super important players. I remember even as I think about it now, I'm remembering like Bissouma and how awesome of a signing I thought that was, and how ironic it is that I haven't even seen him this summer. But he's not the only one. You guys had one of the biggest and best transfer windows. How is it possible then for that to have turned into this? Like, there wasn't a problem last year, and you've only improved the team since then. Same manager, so why is there an issue this year?
I think it has to do with expectations, and like I said, it goes back to his lack of flexibility. I mean, he refuses to change anything. I mean, for weeks, Son was playing like the worst outside, the worst winger in the league, right? And he refused to let another player start over him. And that could be 2 players. That could be Danjuma. That could be Richarlison. It could be Perisic even. And he refused to do it. Not until Stellini took over when he had his surgery that finally that happened. And he did it once in the fall. But one good performance does not outweigh all the others. These players are professionals. If you bench them for poor form, they shouldn't, if they're top professionals, whine and completely break down, right? Son is not a 21-year-old youth, youngster that is a rising star that you need to carefully manage his confidence and all that. Obviously, confidence is important still, but part of getting that back is saying, hey, your spot's not guaranteed. I don't care if you had the golden boot last year. We are trying to win, and that's every game. And there are players that are hungry to do so, right? He didn't give Richarlison a chance all fall. I mean, it's absurd. And then you look at Danjuma, who we just signed in January, scores on his debut. Granted, it was kind of a lucky goal. He mishit it, obviously, but from what I've seen from him in training videos and from the small time he's played, he is fiery and he wants to play and he wants to win. So let those guys loose. Just because he might be a bit younger or not a big name brand that you wanted specifically, that doesn't mean anything. Everyone thought the same of Kulusevski and Bentancur last January. Everyone was like, really, this is who we got? But guess what? They turned out to be two of our most important players. When it comes down to it, Conte's rigidity and his lack of ability to adapt to the situation at hand is ultimately what wrote his destiny. And I obviously he wouldn't agree with that, but I'd be hard pressed to find fans that when they really thought about it and took their emotions out of it, didn't agree with that. I mean, Daniel Levy, you can say whatever you want about him, but he bought players, right? I mean, Richarlison is no small signing, right? I mean, yes, that he was very expensive and he's had some injury issues, but also he hasn't really gotten that many chances, and he's not really playing the position that he's used to playing. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about Brian Hill. The only time he played Brian Hill was that when we literally had no one else to play because of injuries. And guess what? He plays phenomenally, and he actually looks like he wants to win and wants to do something. And that's when we kind of picked up form a little bit again. And then guess what we do? We get rid of him in January. Why? It's absurd to me. I mean, it makes no sense. And
favorite of the podcast, Brian Hill.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I was Conte out for a while. To have that sense of lack of flexibility is just unacceptable as a manager, and for a team like Tottenham, you have to have that, and you have to prioritize that. And obviously, there's some sort of conversation that needs to be had with the board and with Daniel, and say, hey, what's the real problem here? And we need to really think about who this next manager is, because Pochettino would still be in charge with his last contract that he signed if he didn't get sacked. So think about that and how many managers we've had since then. It's a little bit crazy. So this next manager is going to have a lot to do, but as far as Daniel Levy's concerned, he needs to make this the right choice. And for me, that's Pochettino or Nagelsmann, but I personally think Pochettino's the way to go. He still loves the club, and he still loves Tottenham, and he knows what he'd be getting himself into, and he'd be able to have the leverage to say, hey, you need to let me do this right this time. Because it wasn't like Poch sat there and accepted the 2 windows without any signings. He didn't want that, and he spoke out about it. But of course, nothing happened. So Levy needs to say, hey, do I want to be a team that barely gets top 4 and maybe gets top 5 in some sort of European league, and we get a little extra cash there, and we use it to build the rest of the Tottenham business around North London? Or am I going to be a team that is fighting to win trophies and be competitive with City, Liverpool, United, Arsenal? And that's a question he needs to answer honestly, because the fans know their answer, and he needs to agree with them. Because if he's not, then obviously, he can't be there anymore. That's unacceptable. Thanks for coming about that talk.
Good point. Well, I have a question for Hemant and Clay, the other Clay, regarding this whole situation. Well, I guess it's like a 2-part question. The first part is I'll ask to Hemant, because he's been watching the Prem for probably the longest out of all of us, and he probably has the most memory and knowledge or whatever. But it almost seems like we're talking about right now. We've been talking about Conte as in almost like he got sacked, which obviously he did, which is why we're talking about him like that. But to be honest, having lived through the saga and whatever, read about it and stuff, it almost feels in a way like he quit and resigned. It was almost like he sacked Tottenham, which is obviously, it's not true, and he was almost asking to be sacked. And so it seems to me like he almost sacked, and I was feeling this way since not just the last few weeks, since December, November, since he started doing these press conferences, and feel like he was. I remember one press conference he even said something like, they asked about his future, and we're like, he said, well, let's see where things go. And you don't really see managers talking like that about themselves at their own club that they've signed a contract for. So how often, Hemant, has that happened before? A lot. Can you remember off the top of your head other managers almost asking to be sacked, or them making the decision to ditch the club?
I can't remember any instances off the top of my head. I was trying to think, maybe like Jose, but it wouldn't be where he was asking to be sacked. It was more like he could see the writing on the wall. But yeah, like you said, this definitely felt different. Conte and the club, they never seem to fully embrace each other, and it's
I
not
don't know
like
about that.
it's not like
I
he
mean,
needed to be super affectionate like in press conferences, but it seemed like there was always something that I don't want to say he was like complaining about, but something he was expecting the club on to have, and the club wouldn't meet his expectations there, or vice versa. But I don't know. You see what he does.
yeah, perhaps. I mean, I think it's a little bit unfair to him to say that. He's an emotional guy. I mean, I
Yeah.
listened to, I'd say 90% of his press conferences. I missed a couple of them, but I would listen to all of them that I could the day before. And he always talked about how much he loved Tottenham and loved being there. I don't think he would have been there as long as he was if he really didn't like the players and like the team, and like the idea of the project. But when it came down to it, it wasn't what he was used to, right? If you look at his time at Inter, he left after he won the season, after
Right.
after he won the league.
And that's what I was gonna ask you,
Yeah.
and kind of say to your point about like Conte's rigidity, is that the counter is that well, he has that, but he'll win in spite of that rigidity,
And then he'll leave.
and then he'll leave.
Yeah.
Like he's not
Right.
gonna be there for a long time. He'll
Right, and I'll be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit worried about the appointment of him because I knew that he wasn't ever at a place for a super long time, and Spurs need a project manager. We need a Ten Hag, a Pochettino, something to that extent. And
I think you go all in on. I kind of forgot about Poch, but yeah, on either Poch or Nagelsmann. I think they're exactly who Spurs need.
So
I still even worry about Nagelsmann because he's had that. Number one, Bayern is this incredibly well-run club, right? And if they have an issue with something about him, it's like, all right, what's going on there, right? That was shocking to I think a lot of people. But also, he's been there at the big clubs, and he is a big name despite being young. I just worry that it'll be the same, story as Jose and Conte. Granted, he doesn't have maybe as much of a resume to, demand certain things, but I don't know.
Clay, right? I don't know if your vocal cords still work. You might need to warm them up real quick. But so Clay and Hemant just said we were talking about Conte, and they said he's a winner. Hemant said that, right? That's what he does, that's why, and he's come to Tottenham and he hasn't been able to do that, and it's very deja vu because a year ago the reason he was brought in is because Tottenham signed a serial winner who won everywhere he went, and he also didn't win anything at Tottenham. And so my question to you is, do you have any explanation? Obviously, like Clay Troyer gave a great analysis about this specific season, what's gone wrong. It's players and managers. Players didn't perform, but when players didn't perform, the manager wasn't able to make changes and wasn't able to adapt. But we can look at like each manager. We can look at Jose. We can look at Conte. We can look at Nuno. We can look at the end of Pochettino, and we can come up with specific things that went wrong every single time. But at the end of the day, the club is the same, and I can't come up with like I don't really know like what is you can say like, oh, it just doesn't work at Tottenham. But what is Tottenham? A club is just a collection of management, players, etc. Right? And so if new managers have come in who are serial winners and haven't been able to win anything, new players have come in, still haven't been able to win anything. The only thing that's stayed the same, I guess, is management, but that's changed too. What is it with Tottenham? Like why are they not able to win anything?
Yes, please tell me.
I mean, I don't know how to say it other than being like really harsh and like making Clay really mad, which I might do either way. But I think maybe it's just because the Tottenham name and the expectations of their fans might be honestly a little bit at this point too lofty for what the club has proven for the past 10, 20 years to be able to do. I mean, it's like, yeah, they're part of the big six. They are able to have the pull to attract managers like Jose and Conte, because to be honest, like the list of teams that those guys would join is very small, right? There's probably, you can name maybe a dozen teams in the world that they would go and coach for. And so then when you combine the expectations of the fans and stuff and their brand with these managers who supposedly win everywhere, then, but it's still like a team that realistically isn't going to be challenging for the title. I don't think even after this summer where all of us were like, oh wow, Tottenham had a great summer. None of us expected them to be like winning the Premier League this year. And if you look at the table, they're still in fourth position right now, which if you look at that in a vacuum, like Clay, if I asked you in August if Tottenham were 4 points or they're in fourth place, you probably would have accepted it. Like you wouldn't have been like thrilled about it, but you would have accepted it, right? So I just think that the expectations for everyone they need to have a reality check. You know what I mean? Like maybe, like you said, a project manager might be the way to go because that's someone who could try to bring the team up to the expectations that come with the club. Because if you try to have someone, because if you try to have these I guess like quick fix people come in, you're kind of like trying to build the Coliseum brick by brick, you know. Like
I mean, hindsight's always 2020. If I could go back and do anything, not that I did anything to begin with, but if I was Daniel Levy, I would never have sacked Poch.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. It's like that was what, like 4 years ago. Awesome. That was 4 years ago, and this is like an event in this club's history that we're still talking about as like something that, I mean, it shouldn't take a club as big as we think that Tottenham is 4 years to bounce back from an incorrect sacking, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When you think about it, we've had a lot of managers in that time too, and they just haven't been the right managers. Like, you know, there's a million things that could have gone wrong, right? Like you said, expectations. I mean, yeah, maybe fan expectations are too high, but I think they're only as high as they are because of the work that Poch did in his time at Tottenham. Like we got second 2 years in a row. We could have won the league those 2 years. You know, if we win the Champions League, if all these different things go a different way, you know, who knows where Tottenham's at?
Yeah, but do you think that those two, like if you look at it in the context of like the rest of the club's recent history, is that like just a mirage and like what it's otherwise kind of like a mediocre, like? Yeah,
so it's hard because I agree that as of right now, yeah, we're going to need to take some time, you know, 1-2 years to really rebuild with a proper project manager. But at the same time, like, our players are still very, very good.
I agree.
Harry Kane is the second best striker in the league at scoring goals. Overall, he's probably still a little bit better than Haaland for now, just because of what he provides passing-wise and all of that.
Big statement.
But I mean, if you have him and
best behind Darwin,
and then Kulusevski, and then Richarlison, I mean, these are not players that are, you know, 4th, 5th place, right? That's not what they're trying to play for. And the issue is, how do we get our team playing properly in the right way? And the question is, I honestly am not sure the answer at this time. You know, I don't know. I think the way that Arsenal has done it is the right way, and even with Liverpool a little bit, they're starting to have a little bit of a resurgence, right, in the latter half of the season. But they stuck with their manager, and they know that it worked, right? And you can't really stick with Jose or Nuno was obviously sacked too soon, but that's only because Conte was available. You know, if you look at Jose or Conte, it wasn't really working out ever, so it's not like they had something to stick with. If you look at Klopp, you know, Liverpool knew that Klopp worked with them. They were just in a slump for whatever reason, right? Could still be in that slump. But with Arsenal, like Arteta, people were calling for him to be fired like very, very early. It's kind of like what could have happened if Solskjaer panned out, right? You stick with a manager for a certain amount of time. They need time. They need time to implement, you know, their philosophies and all their motivations and all that. And
well, that's what you would expect. But then when you appoint a manager who has basically a shorter expiration date, just based on their past, then it kind of, I guess, doesn't allow the team to like, I guess, grow into whatever they want, you know?
For sure. And that's why I honestly think Poch is the best way to go, in my opinion. But again, Nagelsmann is a promising manager too, who, like he said, he's been looking for a project and plays the type of football that we like, and that, you know, has what you consider the Tottenham DNA, you know.
Yeah. I think one interesting thing is, like, these
The younger players.
like oh sorry. One interesting thing is like these managers that seemingly win everything, like at least within the past 5 or so years in the Prem. I don't know if it's like a Premier League thing where you can't just like plug in a manager and then they bring instant success to the league. Like if you look at the Arsenal this year, Arteta's been there building his project for a decent amount of time. You look at Klopp and Pep, they both have been at their clubs for a long time, and Klopp had to, take Liverpool up from the ground, and Pep, I mean, a little bit of a different situation, but he's also been, there's a continuity there, so maybe it's just something about the Premier League where these managers that have the reputation for like they join your club, you win trophies, and then they leave, then they might not just work out that way.
I totally agree. I mean, you look at Jose, right? I mean, Chelsea, you could say, was his first Premier League, success, right? And then he went to United and was kind of a success. I mean, he won a trophy, but I think
finished second. He won 2 trophies and finished second place, which he claimed.
Would you consider his time there a success as a United fan? I remember you being very frustrated.
No. I was just correcting you. I said he won 2 trophies, which goes back to my point that even in a struggling United team, where most people don't look back at his time as a success, he still finished second in the league and won 2 trophies.
Yeah,
he still proved kind of his worth in a way. Even I think it. Looking back in hindsight, if you look at the players on that team sheet, I was frustrated at the time. If you look at the players on that team sheet, you have to cut him at least a bit of slack and give him some credit for doing what he did at United, which is what he was claiming the whole time. He was like, "This will go down. Finishing second with this team will go down as like one of my greatest achievements. You guys will see it in a few years," and people are seeing it now. But
right. No, but my point is like it wasn't. He wasn't necessarily the special one, right? Then at that time, he wasn't like what he was at Chelsea and at Inter and Porto. So,
I want to like zoom out to this conversation because this is actually where I was gonna have us go next. This idea of time, like how much time should a manager get? What's a reasonable amount of time? What is the criteria that like you should use to assess? Okay, have we given them enough time to like instill their philosophy, get the players in that they want, versus okay, now we should look to change. You brought up Arteta. I think that's like Arteta's a great test case or test study of this because a lot of people were calling him for him to be sacked, like going into this year or last year, and said he had too much time. But then look at Arsenal now. Another interesting one from this year is Jesse Marsch. Like Jesse Marsch, Leeds brought him in, and he signed a bunch of players he wanted. In January, he signed Weston McKennie, and then a few weeks later, they sacked him. Like, imagine being Weston McKennie now. It's like you left Juventus to come to Leeds for your manager to get sacked. Or Patrick Vieira, he's another guy that just got sacked. So yeah, how much time is too much time? Like, how do you assess that for a manager?
I think it really depends on where the club is as a whole and what you're trying to achieve. Obviously, if your goal is to like avoid relegation, then you can't waste months and months on a manager that's underperforming. And if that's all you want, then you got to be pretty ruthless about who you keep around and who you don't. But then if you are a club like Tottenham who has higher aspirations, then you got to give the team you got to give the manager more time to build what they envision like building a team with,
It's tough though because so I agree, but the thing with Tottenham is it's easy to like say in hindsight now looking back at the managers and be like, oh, why did they assign just these serial winners, just like why they should have gone with Poch might have not been available, like someone like that to like rebuild the club. But the thing is, if I'm Levy, right, 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe even like all the way going back to Poch, like when they got rid of Poch, it's like I'm thinking, okay, Tottenham, kind of in the grand scheme of thing, used to be nobodies, and they're still not fully proven, but in the last 5-7 years, we've kind of become somebody, right? We have more money now. We started playing better. Pochettino's got us playing really good football. And, we've even been close to the title 1 or 2 years, right? We've been So
And
this
to the Champions League final.
and got to the Champions League final, right? So we're looking like a team that people are actually noticing now. We're looking like a team that can actually win something. And if you look at the team and say, okay, what is, why we've become that team? It's because of, some big names like Kane who have panned out, like Son who have panned out. Obviously the center backs back in the day and now they're gone. But realistically, you think of Tottenham over the last 7 years, the names that have made them big. You think of names like Kane and Son, and then there's other players like Eriksson and Deli when he was big, etc. And I'm thinking if I'm Levy, I'm like, man, these players they're not getting any younger. They're not old by any means, but they're kind of in their prime right now, right? This has been our best chance in history for Tottenham to be kind of up there with one of the best teams in Europe. The only reason we're not is not because of the way we're playing. Pochettino had them playing very good attacking football. It's because we haven't won anything. And we've gotten close, but still not close enough for anyone to actually take notice. We need to win. That's what needs to happen now. Pochettino had us playing great football, still didn't win. And so I feel like if I'm Dan Levy, I'm thinking this is my best chance. I need to go now. I need to win now. And I don't know necessarily that's my explanation for Mourinho. That's my explanation for even Conte now. And honestly, I know that the right decision is to bring in somebody to rebuild the club, but there's a part of me, if I'm kind of the owner, that still a little bit wants to take that gamble because I don't know how much longer Kane's going to stay. I mean, he's been, staying for like 6 years after everyone thinks he's going to leave. And if he leaves and, looks like Clay Torre decided to leave. He wasn't happy with what I was talking about. But if he leaves and Son leaves or someone else leaves, right, then I feel like maybe my chance is gone. Maybe Tottenham is even worse off than they were before. Because what is Tottenham without Kane right now? He's, they're one like super bright spot that's kept them relevant. And so, honestly, part of me is like, man, just take another gamble. Just try to win something. I really just want to get Tottenham that trophy. And it's not going to happen if he brings in a rebuilder, which is the right decision. And I think that if that's a decision, Tottenham fans are also going to need to be patient and just accept, it's like, hey, this is a big project we're undertaking. And in 8 months' time of this new manager, we might be 7th place, like Arsenal were 2 years ago under Arteta, like they even were, last year at some point. And we just have to accept that that's okay, as long as we're starting to see a certain DNA being instilled in the club, which is the one reason why Arsenal made the right decision by not tagging Arteta, because you could see that he had brought a philosophy, he was instilling the philosophy, the players were happy, he was bringing up youth, and I personally thought it was clear that unless luck wasn't on their side, that they were going to get better and there was a final goal. And so maybe that's kind of the criteria. It's like it shouldn't be winning, it should be because winning can't happen.
Yeah, instead maybe less so of the results, but the performance and
Right.
like other signs. I think even Klopp's first few years too. Like I think Liverpool might have finished 7th or 9th, but you could see like evidence and seeds of Klopp style play in those teams, early teams developing.
Yeah, that's one thing that you have to, if you're gonna say, okay, we're gonna give this guy some time, you have to at least within the first few seasons have some glimpses of progress and glimpses of what their end product's going to be. You can't expect it every single game, and not even like during the game. You might have like 15-minute periods where you just see like, okay, this is what we want to get to in a few seasons. But I mean, I just think that the carousel of, okay, well, you're not working out, see ya, it's hard to make that work, even for the players. Like if it's not a very stable working environment, imagine if your boss was fired every year and you had a new boss every single year and you had to like learn how they like to things done and whatever, it wouldn't be like that conducive to a productive working environment. So I think it translates to everything.
100%. I mean, I don't know if you could give guys like Jose or Conte time with a club that is not, immediately winning or whatever. Just given that that's who they are and they're not long-term managers. But even, I might get, destroyed for this, but even like Nuno, I mean, he got 10 games?
Yeah. That's
absurd. And I get that Conte was ready, and even at the time I was like, he should not have been fired right there, but Conte, I'll take it. It's hard to say that, he should have been, like what could have been, right? And I'm not saying that Nuno would have been as good as Poch, but we got Poch when he was at Southampton. No one really knew who he was, and Nuno did great things with Wolves, right? And like I think we kind of ruined him. Like in all honesty, like I feel bad about it. What should have happened is we should have signed Paulo Fonseca that summer, but somehow for some reason that fell through, and that was I think the perfect type of manager for Tottenham. You know, after Jose, we said we need a project manager. Oh, then all of a sudden we got excited with Conte again. You know, obviously the fans want to win. You know, and if that prospect is there, then of course we're gonna fall. We're gonna want that, right? We're gonna fall prey to that potential for glory. And
honestly, even more than the fans, though, Clay. And this was kind of my point earlier. Is Dan Levy wants to win? He wants the fans to win.
that's a good question. Does he really want to win trophies? I don't know.
Well, my question was going to be: does he start getting worried not just about the fans, but about the players wanting to win trophies, especially some of the big name players? Because at what point did they get frustrated? I mean, you would say like years ago, Kane should have already gotten frustrated. Same with Son, maybe a couple years ago. Because the thing is, they see other players moving on and winning trophies like right away, right? They saw.
Yeah, but I'm not convinced that Levy really cares about whether or not they can win a trophy. I think he just cares that there's enough of a chance that they think they can. Like as long as we're still finishing in the top 4 or top 6, and producing a positive revenue, like I'm not convinced that he really does care about turning Tottenham into a team that is competing with City, Liverpool, United, Arsenal year in year out.
Yeah, I think that's a
I'd
great
like him to, and I think he's a decent businessman, and he's done wonders for the club's financials from where we were at when Enoch and him took over. But this is a football team. It's not just a business. There's a very unique way that you have to run this in order for it to be considered successful. And there's a lot of things he's doing right now, like all the concerts and boxing matches, and
NFL.
even with the NFL,
Yeah.
NFL, yeah.
that a lot of fans are really unhappy with. And I'm not as unhappy because I'm like, hey, this is theoretically more money for us to just spend on the club. But if he's not doing that, and if he's not going to do that, then the questions need to be asked. All right, what is his plan with this organization that he owns or is partial owner of, that he's in charge of running? Because it's clear he's a good businessman, and can turn a profit, but that's not what this is. This is a living entity in a way. It's people's livelihood, it's people's mental health in a way. I mean, it's their church for a lot of people. So he needs to be aware of that and choose very wisely who this next manager is. I think Pochettino's a great signing, but news has led people to believe that Daniel Levy's uninterested in re-signing Pochettino.
Yeah, that's what I saw also. My sources told me that too.
We do have Paratici, assuming he doesn't get arrested for all the financial issues. But let's say he doesn't; he's innocent. He's been really good. Like, we've had signings that have been expensive for Tottenham that just haven't panned out. Like, you look at Tanguy, you look at Gio, guys like that, where it's like, okay, well, that just didn't pan out. But now with Paratici, I think we've actually had some decent signings that have, done well. And it's just now it's up to the managers and their refusal to play them and, accept this sense of, hey, we need to run this as a whole organization. This is not just you're going to get the players you want, right? Like Craig said, it has to be using the best players, motivating them to be good, instilling your philosophies, instilling your style of play, willingness to adapt, willingness to use youth. Like Tottenham had some great youth players that have just been brushed to the wayside the last couple of years. I mean, we talk about center backs, and Joe Rodon was a very promising center back that we signed, but yet he was benched for a long time, despite any opportunity he didn't get. And when you're a youth player, that is when getting benched, confidence comes very heavily into play. And then when you do get that chance, even played in 4 weeks, you're expected to do well, and you don't. And okay, well, what's going on now? I mean, you look at Brian Hill, who's grown a lot as a player in the last couple of years. He was so promising. It was the first time all season that I saw a player on Tottenham look like they gave a shit. Pardon my French, but it's absurd. And if that's what it takes for Tottenham to get back to where they were, sell everyone besides Højbjerg and Kane, and get some players in there that care. I mean, we need that energy. And I know Conte met with the players and said, and it just essentially willed them to find a way to fix their wretched form. And it's like, he's right. Like that's why I said a lot of what he said about the players is not wrong. We just need the players to have that will to win.
Do you think that, and Hemant and Craig, you guys can answer this too. Do you think that because, now it's becoming harder and harder to blame Daniel Levy because now they're actually starting to spend money on players. Do you think that because of this hasn't really worked out as you would have expected, is this going to be motivation for Levy to go back to being just, all right, well, if we're not going to win anything, might as well try to make as much money as possible and go back to not spending anything?
And also, before answering that, Clay, right? What's our clock looking like?
Well, yeah, let's wrap it up in the next 3 minutes here.
Okay.
So
rapid fire answers.
Yeah. Clay, what do you think?
I mean, like I said, I'm not convinced he's ever cared really about winning things. As long as we've, at least appeased the fans and the players for the time being and for the foreseeable future, that's all that matters. As long as we're turning a profit. So that's as far as I'm concerned. I'm not convinced he really has cared about bringing home silverware and filling that.
Why would he not just keep on spending as little as possible in the transfer window? Why would he spend all this money last summer and all that stuff?
We needed to spend at least some. We really didn't spend that much money last summer. We bought a lot of players and a lot of promise, but we didn't spend.
I think Clay's point is that he doesn't care about winning, but he's a wily man. He's a smart man. So he knows that he has to keep the fans and players under the illusion that he does care about winning, or at least that there's a chance about winning. And that illusion falls apart if he doesn't spend money, so he has to spend some money to keep that illusion going, but that doesn't necessarily
He's
mean
like the guy with the fishing pole dangling the dollar bill in front of somebody.
Yeah. And it's not even to say that he doesn't want to win. I think he'd love to win, and I think that'd be great if it did. It'd be the cherry on top for him. But I'm not convinced that that's his primary concern.
Yeah,
if that makes
that's fair.
All right, I have some rapid fire questions as we conclude the podcast. So these are some fun, quick ones.
All right, let's hit it.
Throw out your answers. Who's a manager you would love or hate, or love to play for, but hate to play against?
Simeone.
Yeah, I was gonna say Simeone.
That's the correct answer. That's the correct answer. Who is the manager that you would least like to fight in the boxing ring?
Sean Dyche.
Yep.
Maybe correct. Big Sam.
That's actually a fun fact. That's what Jose said.
Oh, really?
Somebody asked Jose that question, and he said Big Sam would kill him. If all the managers were thrown into the Hunger Games, who would survive?
All the current managers?
All the current managers in the Prem.
Ooh.
Hunger Games it's more than just, raw, ruthless.
You gotta be. Oh, Craig's just going for the raw power.
Yeah. I thought maybe Pep.
No, here's the thing.
Might be able to, outwit.
Dude, Pep might be able to outwit, but Sean Dyche, he's built his career on survival. That's what he does.
That's good. That's good. I like that answer.
Yeah. It's hard to do against that one too. You need a survivor.
Yeah.
What's to do without all his, sponsor? If he doesn't have the sponsorships from all the people in the Hunger Games, he might not do as well.
Who is the manager
too?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Klopp would just ally with everybody and just have everyone fight for him.
Turn his back on them.
Yeah.
Which manager would you most trust to meet your family?
Klopp.
Or apparently, Klopp. You would most trust Klopp.
What do you mean by trust?
Say you were getting married to this manager.
Oh, whoa.
Who do you think would not offend your parents, your family? They would be respectful. They would be courteous.
I might go with Ten Hag if we're Graham Potter.
Pep or Eddie Howe?
Yeah, I was thinking Eddie Howe.
Oh, Eddie Howe is a great one.
Yeah, his eyes, beautiful eyes. And then, so we've talked about these kind of bizarre interview situations like Conte's now, Klopp talking about the weather, using that as an excuse. Jose, if I speak, I'm in trouble. I prefer not to speak. How would you feel if you were a player and your manager said something like kind of weird or bizarre in a press conference? Would you not care, or would it kind of like register with you a bit and be like, that was a little odd?
It depends what he said. Like if he's blaming the weather, I'd be like, grow up. But if it was Jose saying that, I'd also be like,
I also don't think that Klopp went into the locker room and was like, "Sorry guys, yeah, the weather sucked today." Like,
no, but that's his point. Is if you hear they hear what they say in public, right?
yeah, but I mean, I'm sure he's saying something different to them in private.
Probably.
It might be
I don't
one of
know.
those like he tells them inside, he's like, "Hey, you guys sucked, but I'm gonna protect you."
Right.
And
Exactly.
like, yeah, do some excuses. Okay, and then last little like we have to leave on some trivia
Okay.
before we end. So, manager of the month awards in the Prem, right? I'm talking about managers that have won the manager of the month award
This season.
of all time,
Okay.
of the current managers. Who is number one?
With the most.
Yeah. So, what current
Uh,
manager in the Prem has the most manager of the month awards?
Flop?
Pep. I say Pep. Oh yeah, some low expectations. So yeah, I like that. I like that. I would think a few of them have to be this year. Yeah. Nice. Wait, how many does Ten Hog have? Wow, that's crazy. Good for him. Alrighty, let's wrap it up. And thank you guys for watching. I'll pass it over to Craig. Oh no. All right, see ya.